I'm personally grateful to you, Dr. R.N. Patti, for giving me this opportunity to address today's webinar and be part of the concerned citizens to spread awareness about the climate change laws and its genesis. For analyzing today's topic, that is climate change law in India, I propose to touch upon some important aspects concerning climate change in India. Before proceeding to the climate change laws, it will be relevant to state what do we mean by climate, what do we mean by climate change, and what is climate change law. First, let me tell you what is climate. Climate is average pattern of weather over a long period of time in a particular region. The flora and fauna of the ecosystem of that region greatly depend on climatic conditions prevailing there. Then what is climate change and why are we so concerned? Climate change refers to long-term shift in temperature and weather pattern. The shift may be due to natural variations or may be man-made. Since the early 19th century, human activities have involved burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, gas, which produced greenhouse gas. That has impacted the climate and resulted in climate change. What are the effects of climate change? What happens if temperature rises? In fact, the first thing is the greenhouse gases concentration rise, and it rises the global surface temperature, which in turn causes droughts, storms, warming and rising of oceans, melting of glaciers, which in turn leads to health hazards, poverty, displacement, because people will move from one place to the other because of the changes. The rivers will change their course, the glaciers will melt, so the rivers will swell, some floods. It would also impact the flora and fauna in the entire globe. Then the main topic, what is climate change law? Climate change law, like any other law, refers to and consists of laws, conventions, and policies that govern the actions on climate change and provide for control measures against climate change and in favor of sustainable development. It is often said that each generation of human being are the trustee of the natural reserve and assets of Mother Earth and has a duty to preserve and protect them for passing it on to the successive generations. The duty to care as a trustee has to be regulated by laws and regulations. The evolution of laws in modern times came about with the impending and increasing level of human activity leading to damaging and devastating the natural environment. Before touching upon various climate change laws and policies enacted by the government, it would suffice to give a brief history as to how the phenomenon of climate change and protection of the environment came to be introduced into the Indian jurisprudence. It would be tried to mention here that the major contributors to carbon emission and the greenhouse gas are primarily developed countries like the USA, China, the European countries. Therefore, the climate change is not a local but a global phenomena. It affects, even if somewhere else the climate is disturbed, it will affect the entire globe and the life in the globe. The traditional Indian lifestyle, which is still prevalent in many parts of the rural India, such as less dependency on the industrialization, on the electricity generation, on the vehicles, etc., and more dependency on natural products and caring for the natural products. In fact, you know that traditionally we worship our trees, rivers, mountains, so that we protect them and they protect us. So that kind of a lifestyle is the ideal lifestyle to protect and preserve the nature, and the climate will be safe and will be conducive for good human living. Although India is not a major emitter of climate change, pollutants, but as a developing country, India has taken major steps and commendable steps in addressing climate change problems. Since 1970s, India has been a signatory to various United Nations conventions and international treaties and conferences, and the conference's environment and climate change and has implemented most of them by by enacting relevant laws and policies from time to time. The Indian laws on climate cannot be initiated and spoken in isolation without talking about certain international conventions and how the development took place. The first conscious development for development for the concern for emanating awareness and for taking measures to arrest the climate change and promote sustainable development was noticeably came for the first time in the Stockholm Conference of 1972. It was the first conference conducted by the United Nations, Conference on Human Environment, that focused on environmental issues at the international level. It was attended by many countries. I think it's about 114 countries. And our Mrs. Indira Gandhi, was the Prime Minister at the time, had personally attended that. And this Stockholm Conference settled about 26 principles, which are broadly declared to recognize the human impact on the environment. And that was for the first time in the history that the environmental issues had been recognized publicly on a global scale. The conference came up with several frameworks for the environmental actions by the members and an action plan containing about 109 recommendations related to the human settlements, development, natural resource management, educational and social aspects of the environment, pollution and international organizations came about. The main purpose of this Stockholm conference resulted in the Stockholm Declaration. And the purpose was to save the world from all the evils that were destroying the environment and to create a resolve to preserve natural resources, to control the pollution and to protect protect the human race from the several environmental issues. The principles were broadly, in fact, there are, I told you, so many, but 5 are notable. It casted a duty on all of us, on the member nations and their citizens, a duty to protect natural resource. The second one is a duty to preserve renewable resource, the duty towards wildlife conservation, duty to preserve non-renewable resource, rational management of resources, and rational planning. The principles of sustainable development was adopted by the Supreme Court of India to the Indian context in the landmark case of MC Mehta, that is that Taj trapezium matter, which was reported as 1987 AIR 1086, that is the page number. Development of environmental law in India post Stockholm Declaration. The Stockholm Declaration is considered to be the Magna Carta of environmental laws. The conference of Stockholm was attended by many world leaders, and the results could be reflected quickly, at least in Indian scenario. Immediately, it came about 42nd Amendment to the Constitution of India. And in the Constitution, major changes were brought about, which was also considered. 42nd Amendment is also stated to be the mini constitution. It introduced Article 48A in the Constitution of India as part of the directive principles of state policy. It imposed a duty on the state to protect and improve environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. Similarly, the landmark change that came was in terms of Article 51A, which imposed a total of 10 fundamental duties to the citizens, and particularly 51A within bracket small g conferred the amendment and fundamental duty on the citizens to protect and improve the natural environment and including forest, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Then another important event took place in the world, that is the Vienna Convention in 1988. It is often called as the Convention for the Protection of Ozone Layer. The objectives of the convention are for parties to promote cooperation by means of ecosystem observations, research, and information exchange on the effects of human activities on the ozone layer, and to adopt legislative or administrative measures against activities. As I told you, it is known as ozone, so therefore the main purpose was to protect ozone layer. And 28 countries originally signed the convention on 22nd March 1985. India then came, in fact, I'll skip a bit because otherwise it will become very lengthy and I'll not be able to complete within the time allotted to me. Then came in 1987, Montreal Protocol. The protocol is to date one of the rare treatises to achieve universal ratification. The Montreal Protocol on Substance also was concerned and is a landmark multilateral environmental agreement to regulate the production and consumption of nearly 100 man-made chemicals referred to as ozone depleting substance, ODS. The developing and developed countries have equal but differentiated responsibilities, but most importantly, both group of countries have binding, time-targeted and measurable commitments. What is the impact on India of the Montreal Protocol? India became a signatory in 1992 only. India is an Article 5 country and is entitled to assistance from the multilateral fund in its efforts to phase out ODS and to switch over to non-ODS technology. So it will protect that the ozone layer doesn't get depleted. In India, the implementation of Montreal Protocol comes within the ambit of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The ministry has established an ozone cell to implement protocol. As for the national strategy for ODS phase out, the ministry has notified the ozone depleting substance regulation and control rules 2000. Then comes an amendment to the Montreal Protocol that took place in 2016, that is called Kigali Amendment. The agreement refers to hydrofluorocarbon amendment to the Montreal Protocol, as it was agreed on the 28th meeting of the parties at Kigali, Rwanda on 15th October 2016. This was also attended by about 200 countries. And it struck the landmark deal to reduce the emission of powerful greenhouse gases, hydrofluorocarbons, in a move that could prevent up to zero point 0.5 degrees Celsius of global warming by the end of this century. The agreement upholds the principle of common but differential responsibilities and respective capabilities. In India, the effect of Kigali Agreement and in India, India being a signatory, India comes, well, it's pertinent to know for all of us that India consumes only 3% of hydrofluorocarbons. And so it has agreed to lenient schedule compared to other nations like US, which consumes 37% and China consumes 25%. According to the treaty, India should start phase down by 2028 and cut hydrofluorocarbon emission by 15%, that is of 2024 to 2026 levels by the year 2047. So it should be hydrofluorocarbon free by less than 50%, 15% by the year 2047. Then another development comes, that is United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. This was in Brazil, and this is called Earth Summit. This is of 1992. That was earlier. I went up to 16 because there were amendments. So to complete the sequence, I was saying that. But in 1992, the Earth Summit took place. And this is actually after the Stockholm Convention in 1972. This is the first one which brought together all political leaders, diplomats, scientists, representatives of media, NGOs from about 179 countries for a massive effort to focus on impact of human socio-economic activities on the environment. The primary objective of the Earth Summit was to produce a broad agenda and a new blueprint for international action on environmental and developmental issues that would help guide international cooperation and development policies in 21st century. The Rio Declaration had about 27 principles on sustainable development, which later on produced in the UN CED conference. In India, we have adopted and followed most of them. The Supreme Court has adopted Principle 15, that is precautionary principle, and Principle 16, polluter pays principle. These are the two important principles and takeaway from Rio conference. In India context, the landmark, the same Taj trapezium, Supreme Court has utilized that, extracted that, and said that that portion in the judgment by saying that in the Earth Summit, the government found the three sisters Rio Convention, which are government founded three sisters from Rio Convention. They are the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Then again came in 1993. Of course, there are so many, every year it takes place. It came UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. They again highlighted the direction to control and try for downward spiral of the climate change. And India ratified this in 1993 and formed a nodal agency in India in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. That was the takeaway from UNFCCC. India has played a very active role in taking steps to mitigate climate change as the country is exposed to risk associated with climate change like erratic monsoon and natural calamities like floods, droughts, landslides, cyclones. And thereafter, in fact, being inspired, the National Environment Policy 2006 was promulgated, and which promotes sustainable development along with respect for ecological constraints and the imperatives of social justice. The Government of India in 2008 also launched the National Action Plan on Climate Change. Then another, in this, in fact, we are committed, the government is committed in this action plan that to achieve the goals, various commitments by 2030. And one of the commitment was to create additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030. So that's the commitment level, and the government is working on that. You all must be seeing, and of course, today I'm in the beautiful city of Bhubaneswar, which is full of greenery and I think replete with good pollution-free environment. Then came Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol was an international agreement to reduce carbon dioxide emission and the presence of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The essential tenet of Kyoto Protocol was that industrialized nations needed to lessen the amount of their carbon dioxide emission. The protocol was adopted in Kyoto, Japan in 1997, and now is linked to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. What is the takeaway for India from Kyoto? India at the Kyoto Protocol was exempted from legally binding commitments on greenhouse gas emission. India emphasized on the differential between developed and developing nations concerning the burden of responsibility for climate change. India successfully defended its obligation on socio-economic development while concurrently forcing developed to take major responsibility on curtailing greenhouse gas emission. Then another landmark comes is the Paris Climate Change Agreement. The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. It was adopted by 196 parties at the UN Climate Change Conference. This is called COP21 in Paris, France on 12th December 2015. It entered into a forceful kind of a agreement on 4th November 2016. Its overreaching goal is to hold the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. This is very important, just see. And pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degree centigrade above pre-industrial level. However, in recent years, world leaders have stressed the need to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade by the end of this century. To limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade, greenhouse gas emission must peak before 2025 at the latest and decline 43% of that by 2030. The Paris Agreement is a landmark in the multilateral climate change process because for the first time, a binding agreement brings all nations together to combat climate change and adapt its effects. You should know, how does the Paris Agreement work? It's very interesting. The implementation of Paris Agreement requires economic and social transformation based on the best available science. The Paris Agreement works on a 5-year cycle of increasingly ambitious climate action, and also carried out by the countries. Since 2020, countries have been submitting their national climate action plans, known as national determined contributions. Each successive NDC is meant to reflect an increasingly higher degree of ambition compared to the previous version. Recognizing that accelerated action is required to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade, COP27 cover decision requests Paris to revisit and strengthen the 2030 target in their NDCs to align with Paris Agreement temperature goal by the end of 2023, taking into account different national circumstances. Let's see what are the Indian laws. We have seen enough. Let's see what are the Indian laws. The Indian legal framework on climate change is not limited to the policies of the government, and it has also passed various legislation and to address the climate change issues. Some of the important legislation are Energy Conservation Act 2001. This act empowers central government to grant energy saving certificates to designated consumers whose energy consumption is less than the prescribed norm and standards, and consumers whose energy consumption is more than the prescribed norm and standards shall be entitled to purchase the energy saving certificate to comply with the prescribed norms and standards. This act requires large energy consumers to adhere to energy consumption norms, new buildings to follow energy conversion building code, and applicant to meet energy performance standards and to display energy consumption labels. The 2008 National Climate Action Plan builds on this legislation to achieve its energy efficiency targets under the Act. Large energy consuming industries are required to undertake energy audits and an energy labeling program for appliances. The Act also establishes Bureau of Energy Efficiency to implement the provisions of the Act. The plan estimates that the current initiatives based on our Energy Conservation Act of 2001 will yield 10,000 megawatt of savings by a particular date. The expectations in regard of fuel efficiency as prescribed by the government to notifications, etc. of the past require a formulate improvement which broadly is equivalent to the average fleet fuel efficiency, improving to 18.2 by 2016-17. That was the target, and the target increased to 21 by 2021, and these targets also contains an annualized improvement of 1.7% and 3% respectively as it goes forward. In August 2022, the Energy Conservation Amendment Bill 2022 was tabled, and that amends the earlier Act, Energy Conservation Act, and this was passed by the lower house. This bills is passed now only on 19th December 2022 by the upper house and has got the presidential assent. The major amendment in this act now is that allowing the government to provide a carbon trading scheme specifying an energy conservation building code for large buildings. Consumers meeting their energy needs from non-fossil source, specification of energy consumption standards for ships and vehicles, and provide for formation of Bureau of Energy Efficiency. These are the changes. The other acts which are there, the Air Prevention of Control and Pollution Act 1981. This is an important environmental law in India that helps to mitigate the impact of climate change. The act provides for the prevention, control, and abatement of air pollution, which is a major contributor to the climate change. This act empowers the central and state pollution control boards to regulate and monitor air pollution levels, set emission standards for industries, and impose penalties for non-compliances. This helps to ensure that industries and business follow best practices to reduce their greenhouse gas emission, which contributes to global warming and climate change. The act also enables the government to take proactive measures to reduce pollutions and mitigates its impact on climate change. For instance, the government can declare certain areas as air pollution control zones, impose restrictions on use of fossil fuels, and promote the use of renewable energy sources. In addition to this, provide for establishment of National Air Quality Monitoring Program to monitor air quality across the country. This helps to track the levels of air pollution and take corrective measures to prevent further deterioration of air quality. Overall, the Air Act 1981 plays a crucial role in climate change laws in India by providing a regulatory framework to control and mitigate air pollution, which is a major contributor to climate change. The other act which was earlier to this was Water Prevention and Control Pollution Act 1974. It's a vital environmental law in India that helps to address the issue of water pollution, which is a significant contributor to the climate change. The act provides for the prevention and control of water pollution and the maintenance of the quality of water resources. The act empowers the central and state pollution control boards to regulate and monitor the discharge of pollutants into water bodies. This helps to ensure that the industry and business follow best practice to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, like the other act. This act also plays a very crucial role. The other act is Forest Conservation Act 1980. This is also very important, a piece of environmental law in India that helps to mitigate the impact of climate change. This act provides for the conservation of forests and regulates the division of forest land for non-forest purpose. Forests play a crucial role in mitigating the effect of climate change by sequestering carbon dioxide from atmosphere and reducing greenhouse gas emission. The Forest Conservation Act 1980 helps to ensure that the forests are conserved and protected from degradation, which in turn helps to maintain the ecological balance and prevent further climate change. The Act provides for establishment of forest conservation funds, which is used to provide financial assistance to states to undertake afforestation and reforestations. The other act, which is most important now, is Environment Protection Act of 1986. The object of protection, it empowers the central government. Again, the same thing, this will create the infrastructure for providing. This I'll just highlight two things. This was straight after the Stockholm Conference. The development 74 Act, 81 Act, 86 Act. These had all the ingredients taken from the Stockholm Conference. The roots of these enactments of the Environment Protection Act is from United Nations Conference on Human Environment, that is the Stockholm Conference. The implement the decisions made Stockholm Conference under this act, the central government has all the power to execute and lay down standards for quality of the environment for different aspects. The restrictions of area in which the industries can operate and process, the classifications of industries, their licenses, etc., are governed for providing safeguards to the environment. And also by this act, the National Environment Appellate Authority was established by the central government under the National Environment Appellate Authority Act 1997. To hear, this is to hear the appeals regarding restrictions of areas in which any industries, processes, or operations shall be or shall not be carried out, and the conditions were prescribed there. Then the National Environment Tribunal was found to be inadequate, giving rise to the demand for an institution to deal with environmental cases more efficiently and effectively, as a result of which the All India Tribunal called National Green Tribunal was established in 2010 under the National Green Tribunal Act for effective and expeditious disposal. I must say that such type of a tribunal, I think India is one of the first countries to set up a full-fledged tribunal committed to environmental laws enforcement. This act, the specific features is that this is a specialized court first, which deals with environmental disputes alone. And this is empowered with cases related to all environmental issues related to air, water, forest conservation, climate change, even noise pollutions. The tribunal has the power to impose penalties and fines on individuals, on entities found guilty of violating norms. And the key contribution of NGT to climate change law in India is that of the enforcing agency. In fact, most enforcement is carried out because of them. Though, of course, there are pollution control boards and different boards are there in every region and states and districts. But NGT is an appellate tribunal to those, also has the original jurisdiction with them and has wide power. The tribunal has the power to enforce laws related to prevention, control, conservation of forest, protection of wildlife, which are all critical to the mitigating of impacts of climate change. NGT also plays a very crucial role in promoting public awareness and participation of environmental decision making. The tribunal conducts public hearings and consultations on various environmental issues, which helps to create awareness and encourage public participation in efforts to address climate change. It has also played a very crucial role in several high-profile cases related to environmental issues, including ban on diesel vehicles in Delhi after 10 years, and the closure of industries violating pollution norms. The tribunals have also passed several landmark judgments relating to conservation of forest, protection of wildlife. So these are the laws. Then certain policies and initiatives which also needs to be highlighted, because climate change has to be fought not only by law, it has to be by individual efforts, by policies of the government, by the national and international citizens. All of us have to feel for it, because we'll have to secure this. What are the policies? Let us see. India has been proactive, as you know, in the field of climate change, and has developed comprehensive legal framework to address this. In 2010, the year where the NGT came up, also another important development took place, that is the National Action Plan on Climate Change was promulgated by the government. And it outlined the strategy to mitigate and adapt the climate change. This is India's most robust legal framework for addressing climate change, and this is based on several laws, policies, initiatives. The primary legislation addressing climate change in India, National Action Plan of Climate Change, which was introduced in 2008. Then this NAPCC envisages national missions on various things. One is national mission that aims to reduce emissions, to increase renewable energy, to promote sustainable development. One of the mission you see, National Solar Mission. The mission aims to increase the share of solar power in the country's energy mix. India is a country that receives ample sunlight throughout the year, making it an ideal location for solar power generation. Under this mission, the government has set a target of achieving 100 gigawatt of solar power by 2022. The target was increased to 450 gigawatt by 2030 as part of India's updated national determined contribution under the Paris Agreement, which every 5 years we have to report. National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency is another mission. This mission aims to improve energy efficiency in various sectors of the economy, including building, industry, and transportation. Similarly, there is a National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. This mission aims to promote sustainable urban development and to reduce the carbon footprint of cities. It includes the development of green building, sustainable transportation, waste management practice. Then you are aware of National Water Mission. The mission aims to conserve water resources and increase water use efficiency. The mission includes development of rainwater harvesting system, water conservation measures, and efficient irrigation practice. There is one National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. This mission aims to increase the resilience of agriculture to climate change and promote sustainable agricultural practice. The mission includes the development of climate resilient crop varieties, water efficient irrigation, and organic farming practices. Then the other mission is Mission on Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change. This mission aims to enhance knowledge and research on climate change issues. The mission includes the development of climate models, data collection, and research on climate change impact and mitigation measures. National Mission for Green India is another very important mission, which aims to increase the forest cover in the country and promote afforestation and reforestation activities. This in fact encourages and includes development of agroforestry system, social forestry, and biodiversity conservation. The other mission is mission on sustainable Himalayan ecosystem, which is very fundamental to our life. This mission aims to conserve the fragile ecosystem of Himalayas region and promote sustainable development practice. The mission includes the development of ecotourism, sustainable agriculture, and forest conservation. Then also there are several visions in this. There are missions. There are now certain visions in NAPCC. One is a National Rail Plan Vision 2030. It tries to create a capacity head of demand, which in turn would also cater to future growth in demand right up to 2050. This is a projected one, and increase a model share of railway for 45% in freight traffic, and to continue to sustain it. So that will be sustainable. Then green ammonia policy or green hydrogen policy is also passed in 2022. And this tries to create India as a global green hydrogen hub. It identifies the production of hydrogen and ammonia from consumable renewable power connectivity. Then the other one is National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. That is everything all together. This is all 5 thematic areas which I read just now. Then certain responsibilities have been created on business and industry. One is SEBI Circular on Business Responsibility and Sustainability by the listed entities. So certain things are prescribed for them. The parameters are given for observing business responsibilities and sustainability responsibilities. There are, of course, guidance notes at the stage, and they should enable a better quantification and standardization of disclosure of ESG parameters to enable comparability. Then Nagar Ban Yojana, that is a forestation scheme. Then there is Apex Committee for Implementation of Paris Agreement is another thing that is working on post 2020 period. How could I forget that India's National Disasters Management Plan, which we have also, there is the act is there, and which was, of course, the main act which saved us regulated our lives during the COVID. This is Disaster Management Act 2005, and of course, and the National Disaster Management Act 2009. So they are also based on the Paris resolutions. Then another thing we are committed to is faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles to check vehicular pollution. This has started from 2015. This scheme aims to reduce the pollution caused by diesel and petrol operated vehicles and promote manufacturing of electric and hybrid vehicles. Then there is an India Cooling Action Plan, which was passed in 2019. This provides for guidelines how to meet increasing cooling demands while reduces carbon emissions. This is because this takes care of the health hazards associated with the increase in temperature. National Program on Climate Change and Human Health is another, which has an objective to create awareness among general population, particularly the vulnerable community, for healthcare providers and policymakers regarding impact of climate change, to strengthen capacity of healthcare system to reduce illness, disease due to variability in climate, to strengthen health preparedness and response. Then there is an energy conservation building code that I have already touched upon. which I missed, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, Amrut in short. And then Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, of course, you can't ignore, that is launched in 2014. So these are the broadly enacted laws, policies, etc. Judiciary, as you know, and through enacted through judge-made laws, have time and again implemented this, interpreted and implemented this well-meaning the resolutions passed either by the conventions or contained in our laws. One such I have already told you about Taj trapezium case, which is a landmark case so far as the pollution is concerned. The other one was this Vellore Citizen Welfare Forum, which in 1996. So this was about the vagaries of that, the ill effects of the discharge of untreated sewage waters in Tamil Nadu to the river, to the Palar River. And that was checked by the use, and this survey was conducted on the basis of that. The tyranny was checked. It was found that 176 different types of chemicals are present in the tyranny's water, which that untreated sewage water, which went to 35,000 hectares of land near the Teneri, as declared unfit for cultivation. So from the Teneri, what that untreated water was coming was making the land also useless and also even life difficult. Even the wells containing water around that site were contaminated and they were unsafe for consumption. So the court intervened, and the court, of course, broadly canvassed that Article 48A and 51A, G and 21A. It was the endeavor of the state to protect and improve, and therefore directed the state to take action and to take prompt action, and the sustainable development, to introduce sustainable development, so that the industry also remains and the pollution also is curbed. The Supreme Court in this also applied the precautionary principles, where it says the environmental measures taken by the state authorities must anticipate, prevent, and attack the cause of environmental degradation. So this is, the state should, while granting license or regulating license to the industries, must bear that in mind. From this, the court realized that it is high time for the country to realize importance of environment and to stop damage that is causing to it. Court also gave emphasis on the concept of sustainable development, and it introduced the principle so that the development and securing environment can go hand in hand. They highlighted the international sphere, also stated that it is accepted as customary international law. This is because of that Stockholm Declaration of 1972 that was applied. Court also said that conserving natural resources, assistance and cooperation, eradicating poverty, protection environment, giving financial assistance, etc., but are salient features for the sustainable development. Court is of the view that precautionary and polluter-based principle form part of the municipal law. It should, and it is now. On this, I think broadly we have discussed, and I've taken a lot of your time. Of course, the topic is such that it is never ending. We can all discuss for days together, but we'll have to stop here till Dr. Patvi starts his Youth Climate Summit in November. and there we all should be prepared and ready for the brainstorming to provide some resolution, to also bring about some declaration which will be far-reaching for the better living and sustainable development. Thank you everybody.
Now the floor is open for raising questions.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Is it audible, sir?
Yes, very well. How are you doing?
So,
good afternoon to all of you. I didn't
good
see your
afternoon.
face earlier. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sir, my question is, in India, we have different acts like Forest Conservation Act, Energy Conservation Act, Air Pollution Control Act, National Green Tribunal Act. Many acts are there, but we say that these are toothless, except something like the National Green Tribunal Act (NGT). We see.
Yes.
One example in our Odisha, in Nyamgiri, to mine the bauxite, Vedanta was very Ori and some political leaders also, they were so excited to give land to Vedanta to mine the bauxite. But the local people protested, and it is still under Supreme Court jurisdiction. And like POSCO also, many industries they're facing such type of local protest. But the lawmakers who are making these laws and policies, they are giving lands. So what is the effect and what is the role of Supreme Court or any judiciary? Yes.
I think Supreme Court has always intervened and lived up to the occasion for the safety, security, and protection of environment and people living there. The first choice. In fact, therefore, the clearances before setting up everything is a prerequisite. Clear forest clearance, environment clearance, and everything is very much. In fact, if you remember recently, Supreme Court, in fact, all mining activities were cancelled, and they say that it's not that it's deemed renewal. There is no question of deemed renewal. So for every time you start something, there has to be a fresh application and fresh permission from the authorities on this. And so the Supreme Court has done its job, and they have interpreted the law. And I think it has also taken big effect, good effect, and it's not going unabated that illegal actions are taking place. There are protests, but the protest has to be balanced. We are for sustainable development. We are not for no development. The laws are also aimed at sustainable development. So therefore, those who are doing it, they have to say, for example, there are cutting of trees, then there has to be plantation of trees. So that there has to be a balance. And those who are polluting, they must be taken to task and they must be punished. The acts are there and the courts are working to the satisfaction of us, and we all of us, all citizens are concerned. We must bring it to the notice of the relevant authorities right time, take up issues, and whatever within the framework of law. If there is change required in law, the parliamentarians are there. It has to be raised, debated, and it will be, I think, the things will improve.
And if you'll see the fund allocation by the Union government last budget, it was only 3,700 crores regarding climate change. But if you compare with the US government, you will see it's only $50 billion. So that fund is very limited, we think. So how can we track and tackle these issues?
Let me tell you one thing. During my talk, probably you would have seen that the US is one of the largest pollutants, right? The carbon footprints, and they are most developed, so they do that. India, in fact, in your greenhouse effect and carbon, this thing, India only contributes to 5%. That too also in urban areas and things like that. And US, on the other hand, has 37%. So therefore, their budget necessarily has to be there, and also our budget will have to. Every country has its budget depending on the priorities. And climate change, you see, from 1972 onwards, it has been taken as a very, very important and significant area. Before 90s, we didn't have a ministry with. Now everything, we have so many laws and everything. The institutions are being set up, monitoring committees are set up. In North India, where those crop burning and etc., they are adding to that. Now so many things, alternatives they are thinking, monitoring. So it's a brainstorming throughout, and it's a continuous process. And we have our targets by 2030, probably it will be reduced. So with that, whatever budgets available, obviously you can't say that one sector is more important than the other. Of course, our life depends on the air, water, and all our forest. So it has to be, and I think the government is conscious of that. And the budget allocation, I can't comment on that, why a particular amount. It's everywhere. If you say that education, health, everything, in fact, the budget should be more and more. Judiciary, it should be more and more, but the resources are limited, so therefore the allocations also have to be. That is a economic decision of the government. The government runs the house.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Sukumar Babu, for such a wonderful presentation. This is Somdat. Right now I'm in the US. I should be back.
So nice hearing from you.
Yeah, so I'll be back very soon. So I will ask you something different, and I will see how you can legalize this kind of acts for climate change. So if you look at the cattle industry, as you know, the cattle industry for meat and milk has been one of the primary responsible for climate change. And no matter where the cattle are, because as you said, that climate change effects are global. You may have a local, So if you look at now, I'll give you some numbers. In 2021, India has the highest cattle population at 30.52%. Then see, these are the big countries, and those are the big countries which are having the most cattle population. For example, Brazil has 25.25% of the cattle. And incidentally, the China, which is also a huge country, which has only 9.35% of the cattle in the world. Okay, so given this, cattle population, and given this, it kind of has an impact on climate change, and given the culture that we have, how do you balance a cultural preference for a particular kind of livestock and yet mitigate the climate change through proper legalization? So that is, sometimes has been always bothered me. Of course, the meat industry in the US and Europe has, in Western countries, is a huge factor in this one. But particularly in case of India, because it is, the cattle is venerated, is very difficult to bring this subject, right? So that is, I know this is a little bit controversial, but I want to hear your voice.
No, it's nothing controversial. The cattle, in fact, we all spoke about sustainability, right? The cattle contribute so much to us, right? And we are all identified, and as an Indian and everybody in India, we feel that the benefits are immense from childhood. We all know about that. Second, I know the resources are there, and if there is grazing and all this, then there has to be more land use, because we have also a law in any climate law that the right to land use, the animals have equal right to land use like all humans. It's not for human beings alone, right? And we care for, that's why we care for the livestock here, the animals here, and everything. So we'll have to balance and see. And I don't think that's a single factor which really is creating much difficulty so far as India is concerned. Maybe elsewhere it's a different situation. And also of course, grazing land is on the population, because of the population pressure is reducing day by day. But still, we'll have to create something for them. And since this is we all lived with our cattle, and we don't think we'll sacrifice. In fact, if it goes down, then you would be knowing about that tiger project, when suddenly the tiger numbers went down. So we created habitats, different habitats. So therefore, for cattle also, we have to create more habitats. We have to create more habitats. So the
See, I think
budget
I'm coming from a different perspective. Tiger, tiger population is something different from cattle population, because cattle population, the human being is basically involved. See, if you had allowed the cattle to grow normal with natural process, you would not have this many cattle in the first place, right? So because human being for their own need is producing cattle for meat and milk, so this I'm coming from a perspective of methane release that cattle is involved in.
I know, no, I understood. I understood
Right,
that
right.
gas. It's there. It has. I know. I'm
And
aware
that
of that.
cannot, that
Yeah.
cannot be captured. That's the big problem.
Well taken. I think the government must be doing something, because we can't legally now. There is no framework. So therefore,
Right,
as a lawyer can't point out that as of now there is no framework for continuing that. But there has to be some, because for all gas and the major is methane. So therefore, I think some framework will definitely come out of that. Scientists must be at work in that, and then it will lead to law or something. But as of now, there is no framework which I can give a ready
Okay.
input.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So anyone else has any question for Sukumar? There should be a lot of questions from our team. It's a very interesting subject. So
anyone? Children? Bacha party there? Anyone want to ask anything?
But it was interesting talking to all of you. It was very interesting talking to all of you.
So interesting part is that we have built this conference room so that our teachers can participate with.
So nice, so nice. In fact, Dr. Patti wanted me to visit there, but today we had a platinum jubilee celebration in the Cuttack High Court of the High Court building, of the High Court. High Court was set up in 1948, so I had to go there, so I couldn't go to the school.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I'm asking about my team over there. This conference room is for collaboration. So I want more collaboration from our team.
Yeah.
Dr. Deep Khare, so you have to take the lead.
Yeah, I thought let these children get a chance first.
Right.
I personally also believe very strongly whole idea of climate change and protection of the environment. And then from the teacher's point of view, I rather look at how school as a system can support the sustainability. I leave the job of judiciary and the politician to do on their own. But as a teacher, as a mentor for all these teachers and children, I look at what I can do about it. And frankly speaking, all your talks, I was rather less interested in the laws, but I was looking at my responsibility that how at KTGS, we become a place where this sustainability motion or movement starts. We are, of course, getting ready for November, but I think well before that, we have to finalize that what all steps we'll take. I would like to put on record that we are a very self-sustaining system, and we probably have started discussing that we'll go for solar power. And I think initially or indirectly, we are all have decided that we won't run ACs at 25 or 24. We will keep it around 26, 27. So we will, do our bit to make sure that we understand the meaning of this and we contribute to solve the problems. In place of only waiting for others to take lead and we keep on continuing what we are doing. So that is what I personally feel my role is. And I'm sure my team also slowly and steadily understand it. And I think we'll be contributing our share for sustainability for sure. I would like to say this.
Thank you. I think to the students, this is my message that make life simple. I think that's one of the things I say that's the minimum we can do, make life simple so that we do not contribute much to the pollution. And that's how I say that, make life simple and love nature, care for nature, plant a tree, water your gardens, whatever is there. If it is not your gardens, then also any tree there is, you must do that. And also follow the cleanliness, and don't use excessive water, don't use excessive energy. Like you are using solar energy, that is also renewable but limited. So has to be very conservative, and conservative in everything.
Yeah, very well said, Sukumar. See, one of the things I always encourage our young generation to not get caught into this consumerism that has now caught a fire in India. It's like getting crazy over there. And of course, it is the export of these Western countries that we are following. Unfortunately, we do. But consumerism cannot be sustained the way we are running after it.
No.
So that's my biggest concern. So
That's I think that's why to the children, I think we have to say that
right.
only minimalistic, and whatever you want, you please go for that. And also this is part of the credit living we are going after. Our times when we are growing up, unless it is really needed, we'll not buy anything.
Right.
Just because you have money, you'll not buy a car.
Right.
If you need to drive, then only you'll buy a car. Otherwise, I remember my father didn't buy a car for something because we are in a very small town there. It was not required. But today, whether you require it or not, you must buy because you have some money or the bank is giving a loan or something. That credit living has cropped up. So I think this is part of the ugly part of the development, and that the children needs to be trained, and their mind has to be trained to be contented and to only go for what is required and what is good for the environment, what is good for their health. So that if you can do, and 50% or 20% or 30% they imbibe.
And that exactly is the vision of our school. And I have multiple times discussed with our team, that how do we, the early childhood, how do we train our kids to not to get stuck into this or caught up in this consumerism. And that is very important. Not only our our habits, for goods, but also the food habits. I'm finding that when I went to I have to spend more time in India, and I find that these young kids, when I go to any birthday party, this small kid, they're just galloping up 2 liters of Coke, Pepsi, and in huge plastic, hazards that they're creating. And that's not because these kids have any problem. It's because they're learning from the adults who are there, who they see them as
Yes, role models.
Role models. So that is where my concern is, and hopefully this school, one of the reasons that we have started this school is to, one of our objectives clearly states that mitigate the climate change by making the kids the agent of change. So hopefully our kids will tell the parents why.
I think my advice to the kids, I think, is you, for yourself, introspect, examine if there is a product, please first find out that are you getting any benefit out of it or not, and then go for it. If at all you have to go for it, but think it should be a conscious, and also always whatever you take a decision, it should be a conscious one.
बात मैंने करनी है, क्वेश्चन रेज करना है. क्या क्वेश्चन?
प्लीज शर्मा जी बोलिए.
Sir, it is indeed a great talk delivered by you. My only limited question is, kindly tell us something on noise pollution, because in India it is not much covered by them, by any act and other thing. So kindly a little bit give light on that.
Sarmaji, we have also act for that also. And in different localities, different decibels of noise is restricted. Like near the airport, of course, because the aircraft will fly, so there'll be something. So the noise level permissible there is more. If it is a school or a hospital, then no horn, John, etc. This is because of the noise. There is a noise pollution. In fact, there is an act, I'm forgetting the name of that, but there is a legislation which prescribes all these parameters, and therefore he can be punished under that. So
Okay.
taking out a procession, taking out a pandal, all these things, they are subjected to this. So the noise pollution also is regulated, but not practiced mostly. So that's the thing. And that is the reason why the stone crusher is not allowed near a town or something, not because of the other pollutants. It's also has a noise pollutant. So that's the thing.
Sir,
It's there.
Small further. In Saudi Arabia, they have, particularly on a religious ground, they have condoned that noise pollution. What about in India, if you highlight little bit?
In India, actually, rightly speaking, actually, not many of us are bringing it to the notice of the courts, and we also ignore. We also
Okay.
ignore. We also ignore. But it is one of the pollutants, and it includes, and NGT has the jurisdiction to deal with the noise pollution as well.
I am grateful, sir. Thank you very much. It
Thank you.
was a great talk and other.
So you are in Sydney now. Where are you?
In Australia, so I have heard your complete talk.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So you will be happy that our students are preparing to raise nursery and plant at least 10,000 roadside trees. Whenever you come, you'll see that. And we have also adopted a village
Oh.
in travel area. There they will regenerate the complete forest with help of village volunteers.
Oh, I must appreciate actually, and this is very praiseworthy. And that will also give them their life's mission. If they are from this age, they're doing it, then they will never be unhappy, because you keep the concept of move on. In fact, Behura Sahab will tell us that the concept of moving on is not a move going to the gym or something, or be active in the morning only. It has to be throughout your life. You have to enjoy something, doing something. So therefore, if they're from this age, they're given that they'll care for a garden, or they'll work for something which will give them happiness, and that's part of their assignment, then probably their life will be much better, healthier, and also they'll have no time for consumerism. Probably they'll get less enticed by that, because they love the product which is grown nearby, and rather than going for a consumer product because of an advertisement by a film star or something. So I think that that will have a good effect on them, and they'll be conscious of their health, the health hazards at the early age. Then probably their life will be better, and they can propagate that too there. And this is also an era where we can sensitize the parents to the children. Earlier, only the parents were guiding the children, but I have noticed, under my wings, I have a few children through whom I do some community service in Delhi. So they are trained, they are sensitized, and they in turn sensitize their parents, brothers, etc. So we call them a project called Child Ambassadors. So we develop them, and all these things we inculcate, the values we give to them, and through them it goes to their community, their parents and community. So it can be a reverse kind of a thing. Like generally children learn from their parents or elders, but here it can, since they are educated in a way and they're sensitized, probably they can spread this awareness elsewhere.
Communication from children to parents. This is
Yes.
really very nice idea. But we're also planning to promote a biodiversity garden where we'll promote fruit trees, flower trees, medicinal plant trees, product trees together in the campus, school campus also. We'll start soon.
So nice, and let them feel for it. Let them say that, like earlier days, children used to demand something, this holiday or that day, or there is a classroom. So they should demand here that we want to grow more trees.
No, our team is very vibrant and stalwart. You see, all our teachers are very active. They are
I could see, in
encouraging
fact, I could see, in fact, your teacher who is the mentor for all of them. So I could see that, in fact, because these are commitments and these are missions.
So I must conclude by expressing our deep gratitude to you. You have come prepared to visit our school, but suddenly Chief Justice has invited you and you attended the court, uh, court ceremony. Anyway, we are waiting for you in our um, conference. You will be here with us for 1 week. We will take you to forest. There we will have
Okay.
storytelling and share of experience by tribal leaders, how they conserve their biodiversity.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me over, and it will be a pleasure. Wish you all the best for your summit, and anything I could be of any assistance, I'm always there. For the children also, I'm there, and please carry on. All the best to the children. All the best to all of you, please.
Okay, we'll take your
Thank you.
help because we want to invite, because you see, we have invited Forest Man of India and our Cyclone Man of India. We want to invite our Honorable my President. So
Okay.
that time I'll go to Delhi and take your help to invite him.
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
sparing your valuable time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will upload your speech in our website.